No.
Marhaba and hello to our brothers and sisters around the world, citizens of the world, that is. We are, uh, as friends of the Palestinian people who have been struggling for justice for over 75 years and have lived ever since under the Israeli regime called Apartheid. Today is Saturday, June 17th, 2023. I'm Dr. Jack Dempsey, and with me is Palestinian writer and historian Muhammad Jihad Ismael. And we are going to discuss today what is called Naksa Day. 56 years ago began the Six-Day War against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, and of course, Arab and Palestinian people all through that region. Muhammad, as we talk about this little-known subject, I think most people know what Nakba means, the catastrophe, the downfall of the Palestinian people in that they were massively displaced from their original villages in the region. What is June 5th, 1967? What is it known for as Naksa Day? How is that different from Nakba? Naksa Day. Please tell us about the meaning of that.
Hello, brother. I am happy to be talking with you today and to be talking with all our friends all over the world. In fact, today we are going to talk about June 5th incident, the Six-Day War. We call it in the Arabic culture, we call it Naksa. And here we have to the word Naksa stands for, and what is the difference between Naksa and Nakba. I think most of us, we know the word Nakba. It means the catastrophe when the Palestinian people were expelled out of their homeland in the year 1948. But when we talk about Naksa, I think it means the setback or the fiasco in the English terminology. I think the most suitable equivalents for this word are setback and fiasco. Why fiasco? Because in this war, three Arab armies were smashed in very, very few days, and they paid very, very high casualties, whether you speak about the Egyptian army or the Syrian or the Jordanian, they paid very, very high casualties. But if we compare those casualties with the Israelis, almost the Israeli army did not harm at all. Their casualties were very, very limited. So according to the Arab people, the Arab nation, it was a fiasco because strong armies were defeated within 4 or 5 days only.
Yep. And it's a term that seems to go with this word in Greek that people can see over my shoulder backwards, of course, but it says bahalo. It's the name of a crazy nightclub for a while here in Heraklion in Crete, but it means bahalo, a great fiasco, as you just said, a great kind of catastrophe of confusion caused by bad leadership, confused policy, confused government. And to say that it means a setback, Naksa, Muhammad, it seems that, well, 1967, 56 years ago, it's been an awful long time to have been set back. And this was, in fact, the series of days, the War of 67, that began Israel's modern history as a cut off, confined, enclosed, or occupied community, right?
Yes, yes, brother. We talked about what happened on the Arabian three fronts, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, but we didn't talk yet about what happened inside the historical Palestine. In fact, we have the Israeli army used to invade the total area of West Bank and the total area of Gaza Strip.
Yes.
So the Israeli army used to occupy the whole area of Gaza and the West Bank. And in fact, if we want to speak about the results or the aftermath of this war or this fiasco, in fact, we have so many people. We can speak about many thousands of Palestinians were expelled even out of Gaza and West Bank to the diaspora. So we can classify it as a minor Nakba, because even in the aftermath of Naksa, we have so many thousands of Palestinians who were expelled outside of their houses. So it was really a minor Nakba.
Okay, I see what you mean now much more clearly, and I thank you for that. Among the accounts that I've read, Muhammad, there is one historian named Miko Peled, P-E-L-E-D, published a book a few years ago called The General's Son. Miko Peled's father was one of the original generals of the Israeli army that planned and carried out the Six-Day War. But Peled's account, coming directly from Israeli state documents, meetings of their generals before the war started, and so on, his claim, and he's supported by the Israeli state documents, is that this was not a massive conspiracy of the Arab countries to destroy Israel, but rather it was Israel attacking those countries before they could even think about such an action. But they wanted to wipe the Arab armies off the map as a factor in future relations. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, in fact, brother, if you go back to the memoirs and the historical texts, the testimonies of so many Israeli generals, colonels, diplomats, politicians, always they are justifying this war by saying that it's okay, we made this war like a preemptive act. It was a preemptive war because in that time Jamal Abdel Nasser, the Egyptian leader, was preparing his troops inside the Sinai Peninsula, and he was about to wage an attack over Israel. So we used to attack the Egyptian army, and
Yes.
we started this war like some sort of preemptive action. Yeah, always they are justifying this war by this reason. But if you want to speak neutrally, I think always Israel has this sense of expansion. Always they want to expand their borders. They think that the great Israel will not be only inside the historical Palestine. It will be more and it will be larger than the
Yes.
contemporary Israeli area. So
Yes.
I think it was a war of expansion, not a preemptive war.
I see. And what would you say is the most important thing that people should know about the Naksa? How did it most change the life of people in Gaza, because they became an occupied people at that point? And then there were several steps and minor conflicts that resulted in the enclosure of Gaza. And I have something to share from a news article that came out some time ago. But how would you say, Muhammad, that it changed the Naksa? How did it change life for Palestinians in Gaza?
Yes, brother. First of all, Naksa changed the situation totally in Palestine, because after Naksa, we have a new situation. We have all the area of Palestine, 27,000 square kilometers. All of this area became under the Israeli control. So now we haven't Egyptian administration over Gaza. We haven't Jordanian administration over Jerusalem and West Bank. Now all the land from Jordan River until Mediterranean coast, all of this land is governed by Israel. This is number one. Number two, as I told you, we have so many waves of immigration. They used to enforce many thousands of Palestinians to leave their houses and to go to the diaspora, whether in Syria, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Egypt, in Europe, etc. Number three, we have so many massacres. We have so many massacres that took place in Gaza and in Khan Yunis. It is the second largest city in Gaza Strip, Khan Yunis. It locates directly to the south of Bala. In fact, very, very cruel massacre took place in Khan Yunis. More than 60 or 70 children, women, innocent people were killed with a cold war, with a cold blood. Sorry. Also, we have something new according to the international law, because after this date, June 5th, 1967, all the negotiations, all the United Nations resolutions, all the accords, all the agreements, all the talks between Arabs and Israelis are talking about the new shaping of borders which took place in this war. Because always when we have negotiations between PLO, Arab states, and Israel, always we are demanding, it's okay, please give us a total withdrawal to the borders of 4th June 1967. Yes. So we need the original borders before the day of invasion, before the day of June 5th, 1967. So this turning point became very important in the negotiations and talks since 70s right now, because the Palestinian state, according to Oslo Accord, should be set up on those borders, the borders of 4th June 4th, 1967.
Yes. I'm going to close my curtains, Muhammad, and ladies and gentlemen, so that I don't look like the Rainbow Man. I think that's what's happening with my camera. 1 second. Excuse me. I hope that's a little bit better. So, Muhammad, let's understand this in a larger perspective. In 1948, when your family was displaced from Shafir, that meant that you were going as refugees, exiles, into Gaza. That's where your father was born, on the roadside, as we've told a few times on these programs, along with about 200,000 other Palestinians. Now, that's an enormous influx of people into the small area of Gaza. And then 19 years later, 1967 war, as you just mentioned, many people were forced to leave Gaza. Many Arabs and Palestinians were forced to leave Gaza. So why? They had been sent there as refugees, and then they were told to leave? How many, I mean, if there were 1 million people in Gaza then, what percentage of the people were told to leave? How did that all happen? Why did they have to leave when they were already refugees?
Yes, brother. They want them to experience the diaspora twice. The first diaspora, it's an internal one, to be expelled from Shafir, from Ashdod, from Ekron to Gaza Strip. This is the first wave of immigration, the internal one inside Palestine. But they want them to experience a second kind of immigration, which is the external one. So it's not enough to leave Ekron or Ashdod or Shafir or Gath and go to Gaza. No, you have to go outside. You have to go to Egypt. You have to go to Sudan, to Tunisia, to Syria. I don't want to see you here. You have to go away. Yeah, this is number one. Number two, in fact, they wanted to reduce the population density inside Gaza. They wanted to reduce this density. Yeah.
And it wasn't to make people more comfortable. It was to lessen their population and thus decrease them as a, quote, threat, right? I mean, we've talked already about the roots of this racism in the Bible, and that it tells the people of Israel to remove or, if necessary, exterminate, get them off the land, the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Philistines, whatever you want to call them, okay? And this seems exactly in keeping with those goals of the Torah. In other words, you just said it yourself. We don't want to see you anymore. And when Mr. Trump's genius boy, Jared Kushner, drew up his vision for peace in Palestine, he made a map that showed a tunnel, underground tunnel, 50 miles long, going from Gaza to some part of the occupied territory. Now, why would you need a tunnel? So that they don't even have to ever see you. It's just an incredible gesture that has its own insane consistency.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, they doesn't believe at all in the coexistence. And if you look today to the Palestinians or the Arabs who are living under a total citizenship inside Israel, I mean the 48 Arabs who live inside Israel, always, every day, they are facing all the kinds of discrimination inside Israel. Because unfortunately, the Jews' vision to the Goyim or to the, they consider them like foreign nations, like Arabs and etc. Always they are looking to them in a vision of hatred. They doesn't accept the idea that any democratic society should has a kind of diversity. It should absorb all the kinds of races, of nations, of thoughts, of ideologies. Unfortunately, they doesn't believe in that. So if you look to the Arabs who live inside Israel, I think if you just try to trace their testimonies, what they write on social media, what they make in their tweets, always they are talking about their daily life, how they face this hatred inside Israel. They are facing a cruel discrimination. So we repeat again, brother. In fact, they tried to get rid of those Palestinians and throw them away to outside of the historical Palestine, because in that time it was not enough to throw them only to Gaza, but we have to expel them for other countries. If they didn't make this procedure, I think Gaza today it's supposed to be 5 million or 6 million. So Gaza today is only 2.5 million. But if they didn't reduce the population of Gaza in the aftermath of Naksa, I think we will see the population higher and higher. I think they're supposed to be 5 or 6 million. So it was a genius thought, a smart thought, not a random one.
Yes, although a kind of evil genius, right? And that also opened the new chapter, the more modern chapter in Gaza's history, which is the history of the barrier. How Gazans became locked in to this place. The first intifada was in 1987. And after this great movement of resistance, they began building a barrier to support what they called separation. Very important big word in the Bible. We must separate from all those other peoples and not let them be one of us and not be like them. All the different traditional ways that people used to live together in peace and negotiate peace, intermarriage, feasting, sharing food, sharing a landscape that supported them all. These were henceforth forbidden. People no longer had these means with which to smooth over their differences and get along. So the history of the barrier begins around 1992. 1993 sees the Oslo Accords. And by 1996, whatever those accords had to say, the barrier was, quote, finished, closed. Was 1996 the year that it was officially closed, except for Palestinian traffic of very restricted kinds?
Yes, brother. Yeah, always they used to separate between their population and the Palestinians. I told you maybe in the last video that they used to make very long curfews upon us. I told you that once we had a 3 month curfew. So
Yes.
you shouldn't even leave your house. They don't want to see your face. You should be hidden inside your walls, inside your house. They even don't want to see your face in the street. So can you imagine to what extent we have this sort of hatred? Yeah. Uh, Always they are separating between us. And as you know, in the first intifada, they used to make a blocking for the main streets of Gaza. We have the main streets in Gaza were blocked with walls, high walls of cement and concrete.
Yes.
So these roads, these streets were blocked. There is no movement for people who are walking upon their feet, or people who are moving with their vehicles, their cars. So they are restricting the movement. Yeah. In addition to the curfews, to the continuous curfews.
Yes. And so against this, I think it's 13 years later, 2000, 12 years later, the second intifada. Shouldn't be a surprise at all that this happened, in that human beings need freedom. They need everything that life requires to be happy and to feel as though they have agency over their destiny. When these things are denied, you're going to get another uprising. It's simply inevitable. And this resulted in an even firmer crackdown on Gaza. And I want to share with you and our readers, this is a statement from an academic at Haifa University, a demographer named Arnon Sofer. And he is called the architect of the current isolation of Gaza. In 2004, Mr. Arnon Sofer advised the government of Ariel Sharon to withdraw Israeli forces from within Gaza, seal the territory off from the outside world, and simply shoot anyone who tries to break out. Quote, he said in an interview, when 2.5 million people live in a closed off Gaza, it's going to be a human catastrophe. He told this to an interviewer in the Jerusalem Post, November 11th, 2004. Quote, those people will become even worse animals than they are today with the aid of an insane fundamentalist Islam. The pressure at the border will be awful. It's going to be a terrible war. So if we want to remain alive, we'll have to kill and kill and kill all day, every day. That's what this
brother.
demographer envisioned as the future of Gaza. And then in 2018, we see the ultimate act of diplomatic desperation, which is the Great March of Return, when the people, without the organizational involvement of Hamas, marched to the borders of Gaza to appeal to the world and to the Israelis to open the gates. There is nothing to be afraid of. We are not bearing arms. And hundreds and dozens and more hundreds and dozens were shot to death, shot and crippled. And I think the last program or before that one, we were trying to grasp the courage and the fortitude of the people who tried to do that and what they got for it in return. Where can it go from here? So Gaza is still suffering from the Naksa of June 67. And well, I guess I want to ask, what other continuities do you see between that time and this now?
Yes, brother. Gaza, actually, it was affected by Naksa even more than Nakba, because the original citizens of Gaza City, they were not harmed during Nakba. You know, the original people of Gaza, the Gazans. We are the refugees who were harmed because we were forced to leave Shafir and leave our villages in central Palestine and to immigrate to Gaza. But the original people of Gaza, they were not harmed in the Nakba. In fact, their real Nakba was the Naksa, because in Naksa, the Israeli army used to invade all the area of Gaza. They toppled the Egyptian administration of Gaza. They committed so many massacres in Gaza City, in Khan Yunis, in other areas of Gaza Strip. Let me tell you something new, also, brother. Even the United Nations forces who were deployed along the Gaza borders. Let me tell you that 24 or 25 persons of them were killed by the Israeli airstrikes and the Israeli artillery. Some of them were Indians, others were Swedish. I think others were Canadian. So the fourth nationality were Brazilians. We have soldiers, UN soldiers from 4 nationalities: Indians, Swedish, Canadian, Brazilian. We have in total 24 soldiers were killed by the Israeli army during the aggression over Gaza in the Naksa war. So not only the Palestinians of Gaza were killed, were massacred, but also we have 24 or 25 foreign soldiers were killed on the borders of Gaza.
As if apartheid Israel, had no respect for international law. That's not much of a surprise, is it? I think they are the country in the world most in violation of United Nations resolutions. And to imagine them killing by accident or otherwise, as is always the case, international troops that were there to function only as peacekeepers, to keep the two sides apart and to try to stop the killing, that they themselves would be killed. It says a lot about the mentality that I just shared with you in Professor Sofer's statement. Excuse me.
In fact, before I forget, in fact, my father was an eyewitness on what happened to the Indian camp. We had to the eastern borders of Deir al-Balah, we had an Indian camp. Peacekeepers from India were working under the umbrella of United Nations. In fact, he saw with with his eyes how the Israeli artillery smashed the Indian camp. And in that incident, I think 6 or 7 soldiers, Indian soldiers, were killed to the eastern borders of Deir al-Balah. 6 or 7 were killed. So he described me what happened because he was an eyewitness. He went to that area to hunt some sparrows, some wild birds, and he told me what happened. In that time he was a youth. He was about 19 years. He told me with his what he saw with his eyes that the Israeli artillery smashed the Indian camp. Before I forget, brother, let me combine between this and what we talked maybe 2 years ago. In fact, the champion of Naksa inside Israel was the Minister of Defense, Moshe Dayan. Moshe Dayan. And after his resounding success in this war, when he smashed the 3 Arab soldiers in very few days, in that time he was feeling vain and happiness. Yeah. In that time, the Israelis saw Dayan as a god, as the god of war and the god of victory. In that time, he was glorified inside the Israeli society. Let me remind you and the people who are watching us with the testimony of my grandfather when he told me that he knew Dayan's father in person. Dayan's father was a very, very good man, was a kind man. Of course, he lived in Palestine, in the mandatory Palestine during the British mandate before the establishment of Israel. Dayan's father was
in the time when Jews, Christians, Arabs, Muslims lived together.
Exactly.
Okay, exactly. So yeah, go ahead.
So I want the people just to imagine how his father was a good man, and always he was asking his boy Moshe Dayan. He was asking him always, please respect our neighbors. They didn't harm us. Always they used to stand with us in our catastrophes and our problems. They used to lend us money to stand with your mother when she make birth for you or for your sisters. They are good people. We are living in peace among them. Please don't make this sort of aggression against them, because in that time Dayan was a soldier working with the Haganah gang.
Yeah.
And you know, Haganah gang in the 30s and the first part of 40s was targeting both the Palestinian people and the British troops, the British soldiers.
To destabilize everything so that something new, Israel, could come out of the chaos that they were creating. Muhammad, we have 5 minutes left. I'd like to ask you.
Brother.
Okay, excuse me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Dayan, this barbarous character, this aggressive person who killed thousands of Palestinians during Naksa and killed other thousands of Arab during Naksa. This man was the contrary of his father. This merciful man. Dayan's father was something different. So here we have to compare between Dayan and his father. How his father was talking about the Palestinians. He was describing us always our neighbors, our friends.
And that one generational difference is a real marker of the entrance of Zionist philosophy and education of the children into that period of time. There was a long period of coexistence, and then, like night and day, it began to be an atmosphere of hatred, flying mostly in one direction, coming from the Zionists, who had been taught agriculture in the homes of Palestinians. And according to, again, Ilan Pape's documentary research, were writing letters about their experience at night and expressing not gratitude to their hosts, but contempt for them. Contempt
Yeah.
for them. Okay, so Muhammad, with our remaining 3 minutes here, give us an idea of today how Gaza's people think of the Naksa Day. Do they get together? Do they commemorate the terribleness of the day, the loss of life, and do they resolve to keep hope alive? What is it like in Gaza now when you look at Naksa Day?
We have right now the aftermath of Naksa. We are living its aftermath right now. And I think we will not farewell its aftermath even after so many decades. We will remain inside its aftermath because simply the aftermath of Naksa was and still and will remain very, very severe, very, very serious, very, very dangerous. As you see, right now we are suffering from this closure, from this aggression between time to time. We have the artillery, we have the airstrikes, we have, how much we are suffering. We are sieged by Israel. We have any kinds of liabilities. So I think all of this came as a result of Naksa.
Well, this month, again, June 5th was the actual day, is 56 years. As you said, decade after decade, 5.5 decades, and the consequences are still being felt. The world's opinion is shifting, though. That seems to be the fact from almost any side that you listen to, and is very troubling to Israel. So, with our listeners, I want to ask them to think about, well, what can you do? One is write to your own government and insist and demand policy changes that remove support for Israeli apartheid against the Palestinians in their own land. Second, BDS, boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. Do not buy, do not participate in the economy of Israel where it comes from the occupied territory. And in fact, you, if you're willing to do a little homework, can find out how to buy, for example, Palestinian olive oil from their farmers and support their communities. They are desperate for any kind of commerce with the outside world. And last, as our time goes, please look below in the more info section here about family to family. If you really want to know Palestinian people in Gaza directly and to help them by reaching over the wall with a little bit of financial help, $5 a month for aspirin, that money will go directly through Western Union to the Palestinian families. And you will have a golden friendship and a way to help people who have no hope on their horizon. Muhammad, I want to thank you very much for so much education about these events. I know the world wishes you all well, and we'll be talking again to take up these subjects very soon. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, brother, so much. Thank you. I am so happy for this program. Thank you so much.